Well, good morning, everybody. Christine Westerland here at the Illinois Association of Community Action Agencies. Thank you for joining us for our webinar this morning, the ICA webinar series, still continuing on with the organizational standards. I appreciate that we take the time out of our very busy lives in community action to really kind of sit down for, if it's just a half hour or so, to really pay attention to these organizational standards and really dive a little bit deeper into them so we can begin to really think about them in a very proactive way. How is it that we can use these standards really to polish up some of the things that we are already doing at our agencies, and how is it that we can really move forward? And I think that by doing that, we need to be critical thinkers about how is it that we work together? How is it that we work together in collaboration and looking at our organizations as a whole system? One thing, I have a quote here by Vincent Lombardi. As you all know, he's the great Green Bay Packers coach. And I know some of you Bear fans are probably cringing right now. But I think this is an apt quote for how is it that we're moving forward, going live with these standards beginning in October. The achievements of an organization are the results of the combined effort of each individual. That's absolutely where we're at. We really need to look at our staff and our boards, our leadership, and how is it that we're working effectively with one another, making that strong effort and ensuring that we're well trained, that we're well positioned to carry forward with our work. As you know, that we are now actually moving into, with Category 4, that we're moving into the next phase, or if you will, the next overall, the larger category of vision and direction for community action. So vision and direction, I think this is kind of a critical statement to think about. And when we start our discussion today examining Category 4, I want us to really look very intently at what Jeannie Chaffin, in her conclusion, when she was in the IM 138, this is what she says in her conclusion, and I think this is kind of key things that we need to think about. It's together we must insist upon accountability and performance management across the CSBG network. The COE developed organizational standards have the potential to protect and enhance the structural integrity of this national network by assuring that all entities that annually receive CSBG funds have the capacity to organize and support a comprehensive community response to the complex social problems that contribute to poverty. And there you have it. Structural integrity is really what we're moving towards. And that is so important to our work. And I think that you all know this. But remembering that vision and direction today, in which we are focusing on organizational leadership, is a key component, so we can have really strong structural integrity in the work that we do. So look what it says here in this direction for vision and direction, and I've underlined the things that I think are most important, and I'm going to read these, and I know sometimes I say I don't like to read PowerPoints, but I think, again, we have to really look for what the instruction is telling us at the beginning of each one of these categories in IM 138. I think this is critical to how we understand it and how it is that we need to move forward. So here's what it says. Community action leadership is exemplified at all levels across the organization and starts with a mission that clarifies community action's work on poverty, a well-functioning board, a focused chief executive officer, or executive director, well-trained and dedicated staff, and volunteers giving of themselves to help others will establish community action as the cornerstone and leverage point to address poverty across the community. Ensuring strong leadership both for today and into the future is critical. And it goes on to say this. This category addresses the foundational elements of mission, as well as the implementation of the network's model of good performance management. That's ROMA. It ensures CAAs have taken steps to plan thoughtfully for today's work and tomorrow's leadership. So in there we see what's important, what they're telling us immediately. Here's what it is you need to focus on. You need to look at your mission. That's first and foremost. How is your board functioning? How is your chief executive officer or director, how is it they're positioned and how is it they're focused on the work that's being done? How is the staff trained? How is it that they're tying themselves and connecting themselves to this work? And how deeply do we use our volunteers? And I think that's a critical piece of it as well. How is it that we're using these volunteers? And look at that word, it says cornerstone and leverage point. And I think that's a critical piece to this instruction as well. We're really looking at as all of these combined forces, all of these pillars within each of our agencies, looking as it not only as the foundation, the strong foundation, the cornerstone, but using that as a way to leverage in our communities so we can continue this work, so we can dive deeper into this work that we do, and tying it all back to mission. Just a point for all of you, just to understand this, is that because this is the first category in which we begin to see some changes and differences between our private agencies and our public agencies, the language changes somewhat in the IM, and so what I have done, I've tried to either combine them or I have where I've identified them where the language is very different. You'll see that as we continue forward through this. So let's look at the first standard. So it says here, and again, this is a combined one, it's the same for public and private agencies. So the governing board or tripartite, I suddenly cannot speak. The governing board or tripartite advisory board has reviewed the organization's mission statement within the past 5 years and has assured that, number one, the mission addresses poverty. Number two, the organization's /CSBG programs and services are in alignment with the mission. Now, I know for a fact that some organizations have a mission statement just because they've been told they have to have a mission statement. I'm going to suggest to all of us who are listening today, and I do this regularly to our network, that we really need to look at our mission statement. Does it actually say what it's supposed to say? Does it prescribe what it is that we're doing? Does it say this is how we're working within our communities and this is how we are going to create change? And if it doesn't say that, then we need to maybe take the move to change that. And that's really what the board needs to tend to. Certainly with input from the staff and from the director, certainly. But understanding that this mission really is what leads the way. We have to tie into it. And honestly, in today's funding environment, the first question that gets asked of you, if you're seeking private dollars, what's your mission? And how is it that you are articulating that mission? And these are critical places in which that we can examine our work. And how is it that we can move it forward? What's the mission statement say? And actually, that is a question that I ask routinely for those of you who have attended my trainings. What is your mission? What does it say? Can you articulate? You may not be able to memorize it, but can you articulate how it is structured and how it is being used within the service areas in which you work? Can't say enough about it. So visit your mission, understand it, put it in places where you can see it routinely, or share it with people who are coming to the agency. Please, please do it. I can't stress it enough. Standard 4.2, again, this is both the relevant public-private, the organization's or department community action plan is outcome-based, anti-poverty focused, and ties directly to the community assessment. So there it is. There it's saying it out loud that your plan has to be outcome-based. How is it you're creating change in your communities? What happened? Again, it's answering that question, so what? Are we anti-poverty focused? I would have to hazard a guess, if I could educate a guess, to say absolutely, you are all anti-poverty focused. But does it articulate that in the community action plan? And is it tied directly to the community assessment? Are you actually tending to what the results of your community assessment say? Is there an area within your community assessment that points directly? Do we need more jobs? Do we need more healthcare? Do we need more schools? Do we need more public safety issues addressed? Are you actually then in your planning process pointing to those ideas and those structures that you're putting in place to address what has actually happened in the community assessment? And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we dive a little bit deeper into that. But again, it's connecting, it's creating connections. And I can tell you for a fact that many times whenever there is a community assessment plan and then a community action plan, sometimes they simply do not match. And I'm just pointing that out because I think that's an important thing that we need to consider as we move forward. Again, it's linking our work together. We don't have to, this is not creating new things. This is kind of working in collaboration with structures that we already have present in our organizations. So again, moving forward, here we are at standard 4.3, and this is probably, if I can say this out loud, my favorite standard in the entire organizational standards. So here's what it says. Again, this is combining public and private. The organization's department's community action plan documents the continuous use of the full results-oriented management and accountability, ROMA, cycle, or comparable system. And here's what this comparable system is pointing out. Assessment, planning, implementation, achievement of results, and evaluation. In addition, the organization, department, documents having used the services of a ROMA certified trainer or its equivalent to assist in the implementation. So a couple of things to point out here. First of all, I have put up here the ROMA cycle. For those of you who have been in ROMA trainings, this is not unfamiliar to you, but look at what it says. It calls it out. Assessment's always at the top. What are the needs that we have in our community and what are the resources that we have? We move right into planning. So we are looking at the data that we gather during our assessment processes, and we're tying that back to our agency mission statement. So we are able to identify strategies that we're going to take and perhaps begin thinking about what our results are going to be. Then we put in some our strategies and our services. So we're implementing many of these initiatives that we designed during our planning phase. Then we begin looking at the achievement of our results. We're looking, how is it that we're knowing or able to discover that the customers, the clients that we're serving, how is it that they're making change? So we have to observe and report that progress. We have to note that progress. We have to, keep records. And then once we're done keeping our records and we have all this data that we've gathered, then we really begin looking at this data and we have to understand where did the clients start at the beginning of the program, and what are their baselines, and then what are some of the benchmarks that were developed as a result. If it's a job training program, not only did they get it or were enrolled in the job training program, they were identified as having need for job training. They're enrolled in the job training program. They complete the job training program, then what happened? Were they able to find employment? Were they able to find employment with a living wage job? So on and so forth. So that's it. You're looking at somebody from when they entered into it as a baseline as somebody who required or needed job training to hopefully benchmarking it along the way to becoming a full-time employee with benefits and a living wage job. So these are things, again, that we need to think about, and that gets us right back to assessment once again. Now, as you know, in the state, we have started the ROMA cohort process. Hopefully some of the cohort members are listening into this today. So we can begin building our capacity in Illinois to use ROMA more robustly at our agencies. It says right here in the standard that this is what we use, and this is true for public and private. When it says comparable system, if you are looking at a comparable system of assessment, it's always going to, or these accountability cycles rather, it's always going to have these components of assessment, planning, implementation, achievement of results, and evaluation. That really is how it is. And so just to place that out there in your thinking, one project that I know that you're all interested in, are we going to begin adding more ROMA trainers here in Illinois? And the answer is yes, that is our plan. We hope to launch that later this year. I certainly have been in conversation not only with the state office, but I've also been talking with our national ROMA leaders. And so we have some ideas that are being tossed around out there, and you will hear more about that as things move forward in our work together. So next we have standard 4.4, and this again is a critical one. The governing board or tripartite advisory board receives an annual update on the success of specific strategies included in the community action plan. Now note that word success. That is, I think, the key word in this standard. They are looking at positive change in communities? How is it that the Community Action Agency, the programs that you've designed, how is it that you're making change and are being successful in your communities? And how is it that you are reporting that in your community action plan and also providing that information to your governing board or your advisory board? So again, it's work that we do. It's just really a matter of framing it, ensuring that we're looking at every piece of this. How is it that we're being successful? And we're articulating that once again to our advisory board, our tripartite boards, our governing boards. So we see the connectivity to our community action plan. Again, it's that whole cycle, building that really strong, robust system that we all really understand and work within. Standard 4.4, and here we change gears just a little bit, but a lot of this is really tied to organizational leadership, in which that you have some direction in the event that the director is, perhaps there's an emergency or there's retirement in the offing. So here's what it says. The organization has a written succession plan in place for the CEO, executive director, approved by the governing board. It contains procedures for covering an emergency, unplanned or short-term absence of 3 months or less, as well as outlines the process for filling a permanent vacancy. Notice that is for the private. And the public is pointing to this. The department adheres to its government's policies and procedures around interim appointments and processes for filling a permanent vacancy. Now, what I can tell you is this, is that one thing that when the state monitors are in and are looking, this is something that this is a question that's going to be asked. I'd like to see your succession plan. You may already have a succession plan in place. I would say you would probably need to look at that annually to ensure that you have it there, that you have all the parameters in it that need to be there, and that you're ready to go if needed. Also to our public agencies, probably you will have to have a copy of whatever the governmental entity's plan is, the succession plan is as a part of your file. So again, this is something that you can't say, yeah, they have it over at the HR office, over at the courthouse. And we have to actually physically have that in place. We have to make sure that we understand what it says, and we have to be willing again to understand it, and so we can use it, jump into it in case we need to. And I think that, again, we're looking at continuity of services. How is it that we can continue operating? Because, if you have an executive director that decides to retire, that doesn't mean that the agency closes. It simply is transitioning to new leadership. So how is it that we can do that as smoothly and as responsibly as possible? Number 6, 4.6. This is, again, I think, a critical place, and some places, some agencies, I think, are beginning to really understand how important this is. So then this says this: an organization-wide comprehensive risk assessment has been completed within the past 2 years and is reported to the governing board. That's for the private. The public says, again, it's very similar to what we just saw in 4.5. The department complies with its local government's risk assessment policies and procedures. Again, make sure at the public level that you have those, that perhaps you were a part of that conversation, because that is a critical piece of it. The risk assessments that we're offering right now, these are come from the national. You'll see the link over on the other side of the slide, where there is the Nonprofit Risk Management Center. This is a link that you can get to through the Community Action Partnership's website under tools, and I strongly suggest that you look at this. I've been on this site many times and have looked at it, and I think it's really well done. And I think, again, use this as a way to really promote conversation about what the risk is. We all have to look at the risks that are out there that may impact our agency from multiple approaches. So please, I encourage you to look at this. If you have any questions about this, be sure to shoot some questions my way, and I'll see what I can do to help you out with that. And then finally, actually, that is the last one, isn't it? Yes, good news. Good news. So here's probably the thing that we need to think about the most whenever we are working together, is putting together our to-do list whenever we have are examining these standards, and how is it that we can make change? How is it that we can examine our structures, our processes, and really begin to move forward? Well, number one, review your mission statement. What is your mission statement? Have that conversation. Take it to your board. I know many of you have to do strategic planning in the next year, and this is a conversation to have at the board level. Do we need, that should be what launches the conversation. Let's look at our mission. How is it that we need to change it, or do we think this really does articulate what it is that we're doing and we like this mission? Then how is it that you showcase that mission statement? Where is it? You know, is it buried in a pile of papers, or do you have it on your website? Have you been able to maybe pull out of it a vision statement or a tagline that you're using in your social media campaigns to raise your public profile? Do you have it posted conveniently on the walls or in places where people would see it? So again, there is an articulation and of movement behind it, in which people are really understanding and reading your mission statement, and they're walking away with a deeper understanding of what it is that your agency does for the community. Make sure that your community assessment is outcome-based. So we're always, again, and what is an outcome? Where we're looking at results. And look to that. Again, in job training programs, the end is not that you get a job, or the end is not, excuse me, I misstated that. The end is not that you've completed the training. The end is that if you've gotten a job and if you've been employed for, let's say, 90 days or even perhaps as long as a year, and you can articulate that. Number three, my favorite subject, Roma, Roma, Roma. This is the time. You know, if you have taken no other opportunity to really think and weave Roma into your work, this is the time to do it. Roma, again, it is that way of how is it that we can assess, plan, implement, evaluate, and move forward. We're always using this as a continuous process. This should always be a part of our conversation. We do it naturally as human beings. We're constantly scanning our environment. We're constantly planning things. We implement. We then begin looking at how that happened, what happened, was it good, was it bad, and how is it that we evaluate it and move forward. So that's what we do. That's really what we do. Board reports are aligned with the community action plan, and I think this is something that many organizations are already doing, but just to say it aloud, that if we're going to truly understand the work of community action from the board perspective, then the plan has to be aligned with the reports, and the reports need to be aligned with the plan. So I hope that you understand what I mean by that. Does it articulate what's actually going on in the community? Are you able to articulate to the board members so they understand this is the need in our community, this is the planning that we've put behind it, this is what's happened? Again, tying it back to Roma, but looking at that alignment. Again, we're not recreating, we're just really building a stronger system. If you don't already have one, build the succession plan, short-term and long-term. If one exists, then take a look at it again. It's always review is always worthwhile. And complete your risk assessment. If one exists, then review it and make changes. That's what we have to do as we move forward with this work. One thing I want to just point out to you, there are multiple sources that can help you with many areas of this, many great online sources, and many of these that we already know about. So I'm just going to talk about them just for a little bit. But NASCAS, that's an organization I know that you're all familiar with. They have a great web page. They have a lot of Roma information actually on that web page, and I would really look to there to really, if you want to understand Roma, the Roma cycle, and multiple areas of that. CapLaw is another great place for resources, and they do self-assessments. There's many blended online learning opportunities at CapLaw, and I would take advantage of that. The Community Action Partnership has their CSBG training and technical assistance site. That's csbgtta.org. And that is really a wonderful location. I have to give a lot of props to the partnership in the last few months. They have really just started loading in more and more tools in that site all the time. And so take a look at it if you have not used it recently. It really has gotten quite good. Virtual CAP by Kenneth Ackerman, now hosted through the Ohio Community Action Association. There's a lot of great documents that are included in that particular site. And let me tell you, Ken has done just, I think, a really wonderful job of pulling together lots of information. And if you haven't checked it out yet, it's at virtualcap.org. It's a wonderful place. Also, just if you need to think about how is it that we're going to start putting together a succession plan, there are multiple places online that have succession planning documents, or it kind of articulates the processes that you go through in order to build a succession plan, and I would point you in that direction. If you want specific conversation about this, don't hesitate to contact me and I can get you pointed in the right direction for many of these tools. So, having said all of that, I just want to announce that our next webinar will be on July 22nd at 10 a.m. and it's going to be focused on Category 5, board governance, which is always, I think, an interesting subject to discuss. So that is the end of this webinar. I want to thank you all for your attention and participation today. As always, I'm more than happy to respond to your questions, send along this PowerPoint. I also have recorded this. So if you would like to have this to review with your staff or to share it with some of your staff, I'd be more than happy to share that with you. So thank you so much, and I will talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.